Welcome everyone to our Searching as Strategic Exploration workshop. I hope everyone can hear me. If you can, go ahead and please just really quickly in the chat, just give me an indication that you are hearing me. I always turn off the camera so I can't actually see everyone. So I can't see myself basically as I'm presenting, but so I can't see everyone as well. Looks like we're getting responses that everyone can hear. Wonderful. Okay, so we will go ahead then and get started. So the focus for the workshop for today will be to make sure that everyone has a basic understanding of the searching as strategic exploration concept, as that concept is described in the Framework for Information Literacy for Higher Education. We will talk about some potential student learning bottlenecks that may be related to the concept searching as strategic exploration. And then we'll think about some activities, strategies, and assignments that you could use to teach this concept. For anyone who hasn't been to one of the other workshops in this series, just a quick introduction. My name is Jane Hammonds. I am an assistant professor in the university libraries. I am the teaching and learning engagement librarian, and my email is hammonds.73@osu.edu. If you do have questions or comments after the workshop, please feel free to send me an email. I'm always happy to talk more about information literacy. I also wanted to take just a minute to thank Stephanie Founds, my colleague from the Teaching and Learning Department, who will be helping out today, and she will be sharing as we go through any links that we are talking about through the workshop. She'll be sharing those, she'll be monitoring the chat. So please share any questions or comments that you have in the chat. Participants are automatically muted, but we will be watching that chat throughout the workshop today. Right. So I know that many of you have been to one of the other workshops in this information literacy workshop series, but just in case there are anyone is new today, I did want to take just a minute to briefly explain the framework for information literacy, so where this concept came from that we are describing. So the framework for information literacy was published by the Association of College and Research Libraries in 2015. This is a document that was intended to provide an updated and expanded definition of information literacy. So previous definitions of information literacy had been very skill-based, and then we're focusing on finding, evaluating, and using information. And it was really focused on students' behaviors. The updated understanding of information literacy that's provided in the framework is more conceptually focused. It's not that students still don't need to find, evaluate, and use information. That's definitely still in there. But it also emphasizes that there are sort of deeper underlying concepts about information that students need to understand about how information is created, how it's accessed, how it's shared, and how it can or should be used. And that as experts, you know, as instructors, as librarians, as researchers, we understand these concepts, perhaps without even realizing that we do, especially not with the specific terms that are used in the framework. But these are things that we understand about how information is created, how it's accessed, how it's used, how scholarship works, how research works in the academic context, that students may not. And so without an understanding of these sort of core underlying concepts, some of the things that we ask students to do related to research or information use may not really make a lot of sense to them. Right? So searching as strategic exploration is one of the 6 core concepts that are identified in this document that are crucial for students who are developing their information literacy to be able to grasp in order to make sense of all the other things that we ask them to do related to research and information use. So the previous workshops in the series covered the other 6 concepts. So those were scholarship as conversation, research as inquiry, information has value, authority is constructed and contextual, and information creation as a process. Materials from all of those workshops are available. So if you missed any of those and want to go back and look at the video or look at the workshop materials, there are actually self-guided versions of all of these workshops available, and we'll make the link to all of those available to you all. Okay, so there's my brief overview to give background on where this concept came from, and how it relates to information literacy. Throughout the rest of the workshop, we are going to be referring at various times to an action plan document that I've created. If you would like to download that document and record your answers as we're going through, I encourage you to do that. It is completely optional. Stephanie will put the link to that document in the chat. But it just has some questions that as we're going through, we'll refer to those questions. So we try to make this as interactive as possible, given a virtual format. So whenever I give a face-to-face workshop, I always want my attendees to leave with something in hand, you know, a place that they can actually go to get started. So this is intended to try to, you know, repeat that as much as possible in this format. So that you will leave here today with some ideas of how you might think about incorporating this concept into your teaching. Okay. So what are we talking about when we talk about searching as strategic exploration? If you have been to one of the workshops before, you know I always like to start off with a quick video that provides an overview of the concept. So we'll jump into that one. This one's really short. I think it's only like 1 minute and 5 seconds. Hopefully everyone will be able to hear it. Here we go.
When researching for a paper in our nursing class, Lucy struggled to find articles on her topic that were both recent and relevant. Her instructor was surprised because he knew there was a significant amount of research on the topic. He asked Lucy which database she used to find her articles, and Lucy explained that she used JSTOR, since that was the database that she had learned how to use in high school. Her professor explained that it was important for Lucy to start thinking about searching as strategic exploration. Instead of using the limited search tools she was familiar with, she had to learn how to search more broadly and use a variety of different resources and search strategies. He explained how important it was for her to learn how to match her information need to the appropriate search tool. He also emphasized how important it was for Lucy to be flexible and patient when she searched, and keep trying even when her first search didn't work. If she did, she would become a much more effective researcher.
Okay, so there's my quick overview video to get us started thinking about this concept. Oh, let's see. Some people are saying that they are not seeing the video. Did anyone see the video? Okay. So Lita, yeah, I'm not sure why you might not be seeing it. Okay. Stephanie did share the link to the video in the chat, Lita, so if you wanted to access it that way, you can as well. Great. So that video was created, you know, based on an experience that I've had, that I think most other librarians have had, and that I think most instructors have also had. This idea that students often use search tools that are not the ones that we might recommend for finding information that they need. A lot of times, you know, we've seen this, that students learn how to use one database or one search tool, and they are going to stick with that no matter what. And that creates challenges in finding the information that they need. So searching as strategic exploration is this concept that holds that it's really important to recognize that when you're searching, you have to use a range of information sources, a range of different information tools, search tools, you know, and have flexibility to change depending on your understanding as that is developing, depending on your initial results. So really thinking about searching as this, you know, nonlinear, iterative process that can be different depending on your specific information need. You know, it's this complex process. It's not as easy as just going to Google and typing in a few words and then just going with the first results that you have. I mean, obviously, you know, you can get results doing that, but you're probably not going to be as effective if that's all you do every time you search for information. You know, so recognizing that this is a very complex process and that there's a lot of factors that impact it. You know, it's about your attitude towards searching, your attitude towards your topic, All of those can impact your search strategy. So searching as a strategic exploration, again, is this searching is nonlinear, it's iterative, and it requires being familiar with a range of different sources and search tools. So experts understand, and to various levels, obviously, but understand the properties of various information search systems and search strategies, search language. And we may not know exactly how every search tool works, but we do know that, if we use an academic database, we're going to get different types of results. If we use Google, if we use Google Scholar, again, that those are going to be different. And we understand why. At least to some extent, the results that we're getting are different in those search tools. So we know that depending on our search, we might have to use a different type of search tool or search strategy. We understand how to create searches, how to use search language that's going to effectively get us the kinds of results that we need, right? And as experts, we understand that we need to shape our search to fit the information need. We can't use the same search strategy, the same search system, and the same search language every single time, right? There are times when it's perfectly appropriate to use Google. There's times when it's perfectly fine to use Wikipedia or to use Google Scholar. In other cases, we might need to use specialized databases or other types of search tools. And so we recognize that, we have to think about where we would go to find the information that we need. What types of search tools are going to be the most appropriate to that particular search or that particular information need. As experts, we also understand, again, that searching is not easy, and so it requires a lot of patience, a lot of flexibility. We know that our initial search results are not always going to lead to, the exact right answer that we're looking for. How many times have we ever put in a search and the very first article that pops up is the exact one that answers every question that we, had? Instead, it's, we evaluate our initial results, we pick out the ones that seem relevant, we use those to revise our search, try different search terms, and continue to build on that search process. And we also recognize, that sometimes we're just to find the information that we need by browsing, going to the library shelves. Unfortunately, we can't do this now, but, find a book that you need on the library shelf, look at those nearby books to see if there's something else there that might be helpful to you, right? So being able to revise our search, but being patient, being flexible when we're finding results that are maybe not what we expected or that might lead us in a different direction with our search. Right, so we're going to pause there. That was my quick overview of searching as strategic exploration. So if you did download the action plan, you could write your own brief in your own words, how you would describe this concept of searching as strategic exploration. Or if you would like, you could also share your thoughts in the chat box of your description of this concept. So check the time here. Give it just a minute. Okay, Nick shared, purposely choosing the search engine database, search language, and filters to find information sources that are most helpful for finding the ongoing scholarly conversation on your topic of interest. Yeah, great description, Nick. I really like the word purposefully that you put in there. I think that really aligns well with the strategic in the term. Planning out, taking that time at the beginning of the search to plan out where you're going to search, what you are going to search for, what search terms that you are using, so that it's a purposeful effort and not just I'm going to use what I've always done, Jennifer shared, stepping out of your comfort zone and trying, sponsors coming in fast, exploring other sources of information. Yes, we do tend to get comfortable using certain tools or certain sources and not want to go beyond that. Evaluating a broad range of information to find relevant sources, understanding that search is a nonlinear process and will take some exploration. Yep. Utilizing proper keywords specific to the research question. Yeah, identifying keywords and search terms can definitely be a challenge. Being intentional about your search while also allowing yourself to follow alternatives and surprises. Like that, Maggie, bringing in both the intentionality, the strategic, but also the exploration part of it. Great. Well, thank you all for sharing those. Carrie also added time, a willingness to change. Yep, that is definitely important. Sorry, excuse me. Sorry about that. All right, so let's go ahead. This was my summary. Searching is an iterative process that requires an awareness of a broad range of search tools and the ability to use those tools effectively, as well as an understanding of how to refine or revise a search based on initial results. It's important to change a search based on the information need, rather than using the same search tools and strategies in each situation. So, apologies for my coughing fit for a moment here. All right, so when we think about this concept, what are the challenges or frustrations that are associated with this concept? And when students get this concept, what will make sense to them? What activities or requirements that we have will make sense to them? So take a minute, and again, you can write on your action plan document or share in the chat. We'll take the first question first. What challenges or frustrations do your students experience that may be related to this concept? See, Lita shared how to overcome search engine implicit bias in obtaining results. Great point, Lita, absolutely. Finding, let's see, recent ongoing research questions in their field. Maggie shared, my student's primary complaint is the amount of time required for an effective search. Yeah, unfortunately that is a challenge thinking about. It just takes time to really get that you need, and being willing to spend that time. Rocky shared, understanding that terminology and vocabulary change across topics and over time. Yes, absolutely. Learning, when do I need to use the controlled vocabulary? When do I need normal search? Absolutely. Of search tool options. That's a really big one. There are just so many resources out there. So many databases, so many different search tools, and identifying the ones that are relevant to you can definitely be a challenge. Brian shared the library search page isn't great. Oh, I'm sorry about that, Brian. I do know that they are continually working to try to make that better. There's a whole team that works constantly on trying to update and make sure that the search functions are working as well as they possibly can. So they expect to find articles that directly meet their needs instead of having to look at many sources. Yes, that one perfect source. There's a great video out there on the one perfect source feeling that many students have. I'm just going to find that one perfect source and it's going to answer everything that I need. Let's see. It's difficult to get students to stray from a source of information they are comfortable with. Lita shared discovery is biased. Yeah, unfortunately, search tools, do exhibit bias, and that even just helping students to be aware of that, I think, can be a challenge, definitely. Right, so thank you, everyone, for sharing those. I'm going to share just a few that I had in mind, and I think that they align very with the things that you all have been talking about. So when thinking of student learning bottlenecks related to this concept, and bottlenecks, if you're not familiar with that term, it's just a term that refers to different, places where students might get stuck, or, those aspects of research assignments or projects, for example, that every semester you see over and over again the same problems with students. Those can be considered student learning bottlenecks. So some of the bottlenecks, one that's already been mentioned, but there was a great study done by an organization called Project Information Literacy that looked at the search tools that students actually used, and they found, evidence that supports exactly what we've been saying, that students have their identified search tools, the ones that they're comfortable with, the ones that they know how to use, and they show very little inclination to vary the frequency or the order of the use of those tools, regardless of what their goals are and regardless of how many other resources, both digital resources and in-person resources that are actually available to them. So if this is something that you have been thinking for a while, and that there is evidence out there that this is actually the case. So again, this has already been mentioned. I think Emma mentioned this. There's so many different search tools out there. Libraries has hundreds of different databases, and then there are so many other specialized resources. So identifying the appropriate tools for specific disciplines or specific types of information needs can be really challenging. And this is especially true that students tend to automatically think only of digital search tools, only of online search tools, and not any other sort of non-online resources that might be out there. So Project Information Literacy also did a study of new college graduates in their first couple years in the workplace. And what they found is that few of them incorporated any offline information resources into their research process. So any print materials that were available, they would not use, and that included going to people for information. So there are so many search tools and resources out there, and just expanding that, recognizing that not all of the search resources that you need are going to be easily available digitally can definitely be a challenge. When we think more specifically about the nitty-gritty of searching, learning how to create effective search statements, to use all of the different limiters and options that are available in different search tools. We have an assignment that we often have our students do where they identified a research question, and then we have them identify the main concepts and synonyms, and they struggle with this. They really struggle with this. Even sometimes just identifying the main concepts, but often the idea of identifying synonyms or related terms, they have a challenge with that. Students will sometimes come up with terms that are technically a synonym for the word that they've selected, but if they actually used it in a search, would get them no results. And to give an example of that, we had our students doing searching on autonomous cars. And the synonyms that a few students came up with was sovereign for autonomous. And so I'm like, if you do a search for sovereign automobiles, you're not going to get any results that are actually looking at what I'm looking for. So recognizing those other alternative words that could be helpful to them, using Boolean operators, and then revising their search based on search results. That can be a real challenge. And then persistence. This again refers back to that study that Project Literacy did about recent college graduates. They talked to their employers, and the employers indicated that they tended to, do those quick Google searches. They looked at a few keywords, they looked at the first pages of results, and then they thought that they were done. And what the employers really needed was for them to show patience and persistence as they were solving those search problems. Algorithmic uncertainties, Lita has already referred to this. So recognizing that search tools and search classification systems are not neutral, that there is bias in these tools, in the results that they get, in the classification systems that are used to organize information, and understanding how algorithms may be shaping the information that they receive, recognizing that two people can do the same search using the same search tool and get different results based on their previous results and their previous searches. And so understanding the role of algorithms and classification systems in shaping the results that they are getting, I think can be a real challenge for students. And then this is kind of basic, but asking for help. Right. A lot of students, there's a great article, which I didn't cite here, and I don't know why I didn't include, on misconceptions of first-year college students. And one of the misconceptions is, I should be able to do this all myself. And that, I think, extends, to all throughout college, through graduate students. I've worked a lot with graduate students in the past, and this idea that I should be able to do this all myself. This should be an easy process. There's so much information about there. Why can't I find what I'm looking for? And again, Project Information Literacy has found that librarians are generally tremendously underutilized by students. And, you know, I've had classes where I talk to students about what does the job of a librarian, and most of them say, you know, to put the books on the shelves or to show students, you know, point people to the bathroom, and are stunned when I tell them, you know, how much much help that librarians can actually provide to them with their research. And again, I already mentioned this, but this idea of not going to their teammates or their workmates to get additional information, to find resources that they need. Employers again found that new graduates tended to not ask anyone else for help. They would not use their colleagues. They would not, they thought of research as a very solitary process rather than as a process where there's a lot of people out there and a lot of resources out there that could be a help to them. So that was my quick overview of some of the bottlenecks that I have seen related to this concept. Just checking really quickly here. So yeah, Stephanie put the link to Project Information Literacy publications. If you haven't looked at any of those, there's some really great information in all of their publications. Okay, great. So first question we asked was, you know, what are the challenges or frustrations that students experience that may be related to this concept? Looking at this in a different direction, when students really start to get this concept, what do they do? You know, what attitude do they have? What kind of actions do they take? What kind of habits do they develop? And what makes sense to them that didn't make sense to them before, when students start to really grasp this concept? So again, I'll give you a minute to think about that. And then I'll share some of my thoughts, or really some of the framework's thoughts related to that. Checking the time, make sure we're not falling too far behind. Patience, yeah. Information overload. I think it's challenging for all of us to deal with information overload. But I think having the patience to wade through that. You know, whenever I do a research project, I know at various times I'll have 20 or 30 tabs up with different articles, and I just have to accept that it's going to take me time to go through all of those and identify the ones that I am looking for. Okay, so those of you that have been to one of the workshops before will know that the framework includes knowledge, practices, and dispositions. And these are basically you know, actions or things that students do once they start to develop an understanding of the concept. And then also ways of thinking, or, you know, attitudes, habits that they have as they are starting to develop their understanding and demonstrating an understanding of this concept. So I just want to highlight a few of these. This is not the complete list of the knowledge, practices, and dispositions, but just wanted to highlight a few of them. So once they start to develop their understanding of this process, students learn to understand how information systems are organized, right? They develop the ability to match their information need and their search strategy to appropriate search tools. They develop the ability to design and refine their search strategies as necessary based on their initial search results. Students start to understand that their first attempts at searching do not always produce adequate results. They learn to persist in the face of search challenges. And they learn to seek guidance from experts or others, colleagues, as they are undertaking their searches. So again, those are just some of the examples of the knowledge, practices, and dispositions related to this concept. Stephanie will share in the chat a link that will take you to a document that has the full list. And I wanted to give everyone a minute or so to just have some time to take a look at that list really quickly and see if there are any that you find that are really relevant to your students. So I'll give everyone a minute, and then we'll talk about some potential activities and assignments related to this concept. So just to share some of the comments from the chat, Maggie shared, an article might not be the best for their search, but sources cited in the article can create a new path. That's really important as to incorporate that into the strategy, always looking at the reference of sources, being open to allowing those new sources that they're finding to take them in a different direction. Organizational principles, which would go to a plan beforehand. Yeah. Planning beforehand definitely can be very helpful. And I think it's something that unfortunately we don't see a lot of unless we prompt students to develop a plan in advance for searching. Persistence in searching is key. Newer, better sources may turn up. It's easy to settle for the first set of results. Yes, absolutely. Carrie showed initial scope of the time it takes. Being willing to come have a conversation with me about their search helps them realize there are others who can help. Yes. That's something that I always tell students whenever I've had instruction sessions with classes is why struggle on your own when you can go to someone who has a job that's all about searching, you know? I tell them, you know, we become librarians because we like to do that kind of stuff. So, you know, let us help you by doing something that we generally like to be doing. So let's take a look at some potential assignments, activities, strategies that we might use to be able to teach this concept. And again, these are just going to be brief descriptions of the assignments, but in the workshop materials that we'll share at the end, you'll be able to access more detailed versions of most of the assignments. I think I have 9 assignments in the folder available. So again, this is one that I have mentioned in every workshop that I've done in these sessions, but starting really small, having a quick discussion, having students watch the video that we watched earlier, or I provided another option from McMaster University, and then just writing a quick 1-minute response. You know, how would you describe this concept, or how does the experience of the student in the video, how does that match your own experience doing research? Have you ever experienced what she has experienced before? So just getting started, raising this point, you know, about planning their search, thinking a little bit more about their search process, search tools that are available. I also always like to recommend a true-false activity, because this is something that can be done really quickly in 10 or 15 minutes in class. This can also be done in a discussion board format very easily. So as we're thinking about transitioning to virtual environments, you can do this as a discussion board. You could also do this as a quiz, where a true-false statements as a quiz. So lots of different ways that this kind of activity can be done. But I always find this helpful to start to get to some of the misconceptions that students have. So identifying some statements relating to this concept of searching, you know, Google is the most appropriate search tool when seeking academic resources. And most of them I think are going to say, you know, false, but you might have a few that say true. And it just helps to start a discussion on thinking about searching and search tools. So mapping and comparing search terms. This is an activity I've done with students several times, where we'll identify a research question. Excuse me. Sorry about that. We will identify a research question, and then I'll have them identify the main concepts. And this is something that I would just do on a whiteboard, but you could do it also in a handout as well, or some, you know, a digital document that they could use. Here's our research question. what are the main concepts in this question? And we just, you know, write the two or three main concepts on the board. In this case, the research question was, how do academic libraries contribute to the academic achievement of college students? And then we just do a little mapping process where we think about, okay, what are other terms that we could use to talk about academic libraries? You know, what are other terms that represent academic achievement? And I just have them sort of brainstorm and talk amongst themselves, throw out every term that they can think of that relates to that main concept that we have. And once we've got a variety of different search terms, then having them combine those search terms in different ways to do different searches. You know, everyone goes to the same database, and, you know, this group, you pick, you know, you pick your search terms here, another group picks different ones, or however you would want to do this. And then giving them practice, seeing how their results change depending on which search terms they use, and, you know, helping them to think about, you know, hey, you know, I might use college students as my term, but maybe the term that most researchers are using is actually undergraduates. And so recognizing that they're going to get different results depending on which search terms that they use. This is another thing that I've done, especially thinking about those kinds of terms where there may be a common term and a more formal, you know, term that's the controlled vocabulary term. This is something that I would just do on a whiteboard, but I think you could also do this as a discussion board very easily as well. You know, I would just write down a bunch of different search terms and have them, you know, search those pairs of terms together and write down how the number of results differ depending on which term that they use. And I think visually, I would, like I said, I would always do this on the whiteboard. It was always very helpful visually for them to see how the numbers of results differed, even using the exact same search tool, depending on which language that they used. So helping students to recognize that in some cases, they may need to consider what the more formal term for some common thing might be, I think can be really helpful as well. This is a variation of an activity that we have done in our Arts and Sciences 2120 class, where we did this as a discussion board. And we actually had them, we gave them some examples of, here's how results can be skewed or biased a little bit based on the specific terms that you enter. You know, if you search guns and crime versus guns and safety, you are going to get very different results. And if you only do one of those searches, you know, that's going to skew the information that you're getting on a topic. So giving them different pairs of examples of how their results might change. And then in the assignment, the way that we did it, we had them think of a own pair and do a search and then write about, you know, what that means for their understanding of why search statements matter. Precision searching. This is another one that I would do all the time on the whiteboard with students. But again, I think that you could do this in a variety of different ways virtually as well. A shared document, a discussion board. I would start and write each of these different search statements on the board, and then I would assign a different statement to each group. So group number one, you do search one. Group number two, you do search two, and they would all use the same search tool. And again, I would just write down the number of results that they got. And you know, it was very helpful again to see that students is going to get them a huge amount of results, but that's not going to be very effective at all because it's so broad that the results are not going to be anything generally that they can use. You know, so that they need to get more specific, they need to start practicing learning how to use and or not in their searching, learning how to use quotation marks to search for specific phrases. So learning how those precision search techniques can really impact the search. The other thing that you would want to do with this is also have them look at the types of results that they get. You know, are they getting more news articles or more magazine articles, or do they get scholarly articles depending on different search terms that they use? And again, this was always helpful just very visually so that they could see that the search terms and the search strategy, the precision search technique really does make a difference in the results that they will get. So I'm going to take one quick pause here before just to see if there's anything in the chat. Jennifer shared, most middle schoolers think Google has all the answers. Absolutely. Cool. Okay. Continuing on, just let me check the time real quickly here. Subject terms. This is something that I think that a lot of students aren't aware of, and how helpful it can be to identify the actual subject term for a specific source that they are using and use those subject terms to find different other results. So this would be something, you know, you would give students the title of one article that is relevant, have them go find that article in the database, and then have them look at those subject terms that are below that article. You could assign each group a different subject term to use, or they could each, select multiple subject terms, but have them search and create a bibliography or a list of sources that they found that are based just on those subject terms, so that they can recognize that, you know, this system has formal controlled vocabulary for these. And if you use these subject terms, you're going to find other articles that were entered under that same subject term. And I think this is a search strategy that a lot of students don't use. They just kind of skip right over those subject terms when it could really be helpful for getting them a lot of additional sources that could be relevant. So matching their needs to their search tool. This is a variation of an activity that we've seen in other workshops as well, where you might give students a note card or a list that has a variety of different search tools listed. I always do Wikipedia and Google separate, even though you access Wikipedia through Google, but a variety of different search tools, and then give them different scenarios and have them rank in their groups which search tool they think would be most helpful depending on that specific situation. And students always want to be like, well, I can't ever use Wikipedia, so that's always going to be the last one, even though in some cases, depending on the scenarios that you give them, that might be the best place for them to at least start their search. Right. So a variation on this is one that I've done with students where each individual student gets a note card, and one with a tool and one with an information need. And they have to identify whether or not they think their search tool would be helpful for meeting their information need. And then I would have them do like a swap or exchange, Tim, does your search tool match your information need? And if he says no, then he would ask, here's my information need. I think that I need a scholarly database to find this. Someone that has a scholarly database would give him, would switch out. And so it was actually kind of really interesting to see. It kind of takes some time to planning to make sure that everyone ends up with a tool and a resource that works. But it was also always a fun little activity to do with students. And again, oftentimes students would never want to be the one that got Wikipedia because they've been told over and over again they can't ever use that. And so they never wanted to be the one to say, hey, I think that I should be using this for this particular information need. So I always enjoy that activity. So this is a very similar activity and to ones that we've already mentioned, but this is thinking in terms of how different databases give you different results. So I would identify a research question or specific search terms that I wanted students to use, and then assign each group a different database to search. You guys are searching JSTOR, you guys are searching Academic Search Complete, you guys are using this other tool over here. And then again, I would just write them on the whiteboard and compare. In this database, you only found, 20 articles, but in this one you found, 5,000. Because they tend to have that understanding that we've mentioned that, well, all databases are basically the same. And if I learned how to use JSTOR, I'm just going to use JSTOR for any information need that I have, even if that might not be that relevant. This would be very similar, but this would be an individual activity where students would actually go through a worksheet, where they individually search the same search across multiple databases and then answer some questions about their results. So which one had the most results, which one had the fewest, but also how do the types of results differ depending on which database they use. And then the relevance of the particular sources. So, they might get a large number of results in one database, but as they actually look through them, they might find they're not really all that relevant to the research question. So just having students compare across multiple databases with the same search to get this idea that there really is a difference in the scope and the focus area for different databases. Search persistence. So this is an activity that you could do that kind of requires multiple rounds of searching, but giving students an initial search, and having them 5 minutes search for information on this topic or information on this research question. Use whatever search tool you want, whichever search strategy, whatever search terms you want. Give them a short amount of time to search. Review the results. Discuss whether they thought that was effective. Did they get any results that were helpful to them? Have them revise their search based on those initial results, and then do another search. Give them more time, and have them think in advance about whether or not they used the right search tool or search statement as they did their initial search. Give them a second search, a little bit more time to search. Again, compare their initial results to their second round of searching results. And then divide students into groups and have them compare what they search for and their results. And I think that this gets to this idea of asking other people for help. They might find that another student in their group came up with a really great search statement that they didn't think about. Or maybe another student in their group knows the exact right database. That's the one that's preferred for this topic or this discipline. And so sharing information about how effective they were depending on what they used. And then based on that conversation, the student would revise their search for a third time and do another search. And then compare, across those 3 searches, how did their results change as they gave it more time and as they revised their results based on those initial results that they had. And this is really just a strategy, but anytime that you have a research or inquiry-based assignment, having students prepare in advance a list of what search tools that they plan to use, and then when they submit their project, having them describe, okay, I ended up using this, or I ended up not using this, and here's why, or I picked a new search tool, and here's how I use that one. So kind of working that planning into the research assignment process itself. Check the time real quick. And this is very similar to one, but having students create a bibliography, but doing it in stages, and each stage they have to use a different search tool. So, their first 5 sources that they find, they use Google. And, they identify 5 sources from that first original Google search. Then they second search, they do Google Scholar, and they identify 5 more sources. Then you use a general database and identify 5 more sources. So that by the end, they've got, 15 or 20 sources. Then they pick the sources that are most relevant across all of those search tools, rather than just, using that first results that they found with their initial Google search. So again, and it may be that they do find a lot of sources depending on what their question or topic is that are helpful for them in Google, and that's fine. But they would recognize that by varying their search using a different tool at each stage, they are getting different types of results, and they're combining the best from all of those searches to create their bibliography rather than limiting themselves to one tool. Mapping their search process. This is something that we've done before with students. We're having them create a depiction, like a drawing of what their typical search process is. Here's where I normally start, and they can be an outline. It can be, like a map, however they want to do it. It's very open. What do you usually do first? Where do you search? Kind of having them map out their initial search process. This is my typical search process. And then we have a great resource that we've created from the university library. Stephanie will share the link that outlines the research process and that shows that all of its complexity. I'm not going to open it right now because it always creates problems when you try to open links when you're sharing your screen. But we'll have to link to that for everyone. Have them compare their own research process to the research process diagram that the libraries has created. And, how does that compare? Does the research process diagram have a lot more steps? It probably does because it's a very detailed map. And then having them think about that information that's in that research process link to plan their search. We're getting down to the end. Search screencasts. This is something that I've done in multiple different classes with students. We do this in our 2120 class. I've done it when I've taught online classes in other universities as well. Having students create a screencast of themselves doing a search. And this could be of a research process, or it could be a separate assignment, depending on what your specific goals are. But to create their screencast, they would have to identify an appropriate search tool, show you what their initial search statement is, demonstrate that they could use precision search techniques, review their results. And so at the beginning or in the early stages of a research process, you would have something that you could look at and say, okay, this student's, not using the right database, or this student's really struggling to identify keywords. And having them do that screencast makes them think about how they would search, but it also gives you a chance to give feedback early on in that search process. I do want to emphasize that if you do decide to do something like this, make sure that you do give them guidance on how long it should be. Otherwise, you'll be stuck watching a bunch of 20-minute videos because they kind of go all over the place. So we always limit our videos to between 3 and 5 minutes, depending on what the specific goal of that assignment is. Because otherwise it takes so long to watch and provide feedback on all of the videos. Okay, so we'll take a really quick pause here to just ask a quick reflection question. I know I've gone through a lot of assignments really quickly, but just wanted to give everyone a second to think about if there are specific information tools or resources that are really relevant to their field, specific databases that students need to use, or specific search behaviors or strategies that students need to use in your particular discipline or field. So I'll let you think about that for a second, and then we'll look at our one last assignment. Stephanie shared the research process map. Rocky shared, I like going to Wikipedia directly. It has a very robust system for disambiguating terms, which is not always captured by Google. Yes, thank you for sharing that, Rocky. I like Wikipedia as well. So I'm definitely have not been one of those librarians that like never use Wikipedia. I think it can absolutely be a great part of the research process. Kathy shared, do you think we could post the screencast recordings directly into a discussion board for student feedback? Absolutely. That is actually one of the things that we do in our 2120 classes. Each student has to create video, and then other students have to give a peer evaluation of the search process and make recommendations for how that student could improve their search. So yes, I think that works great to have them. The only thing again is it sometimes requires a lot of direction to help students create the screencast. Most of them can do it fine, but there's always a few that struggle with creating the screencast. And then giving them guidance on the peer review process. But yeah, I definitely would recommend that. Okay. Jasper shared, I really like the research process map since many students don't seek help since they don't know what to ask, bring no beforehand. The students could use the map to point to a specific part of the search process that they are stuck on. That's a great idea, Jasper. And I can share very broadly that we are actually developing in the libraries a student resources site that's sort of based on that map. So when they go online, they can, it's not a direct comparison, but it is gonna be a little bit based on that map so students will know where to go to get help for different aspects. Brian shared, I like the search tool bibliography and mapping assignments. My students tend to find 3 to 4 sources and stop searching even when I tell them they should look at least 10. Yes. Okay, so I know we almost at the very end. Let me just share one last assignment. So again, this is thinking about how students can start learning which search tools tend to be used the most in certain disciplines. So this is something we give students, multiple articles or, a few articles or books relevant to the course and have them search for that article in multiple different search tools. So here's a really important article in this field. If you search Google, do you find this available for free? If you search Google Scholar, is it available? If you search in this database, do you find it? If you search in this database, do you find it? So having them compare whether or not they can find certain sources that are really important to their topic or field in a particular database hopefully it's kind of going at it from a reverse angle, but seeing, you know, all of these articles that I'm finding, I can't find them available for free except for in this specialized database. So maybe that's the database that's going to be most relevant for me to search for my particular topic. Right. So there's just one example of how students can start to develop a better understanding of this idea that depending on the context, they may need to use specialized discipline-specific search tools. Okay, so we have like 1 minute to go. If anyone has any thoughts that they would like to share on how they can plan to teach or incorporate this concept, please go ahead and add those into the chat box. And I will just share some additional information. So again, my email is hammonds.73@osu.edu. The link to all of the workshop materials are available, and Stephanie will share that in the chat box. So that includes the PowerPoint presentation. I'll also upload the video from today, as well as the assignments, the handouts, action plan document, all of that will be available there. Previous workshop materials are all available too. And Stephanie will share those in the chat. So feel free, if you missed one of the workshops or you want to go back and look at some of the previous material, that is always available to everyone. And then some additional learning opportunities. I have mentioned this before, but we do have a formal, a full course that's on information literacy that's called Teaching Information Literacy. It's a self-paced online course, and eligible participants who take that course can earn the Teaching Information Literacy endorsement through the Drake Institute for Teaching and Learning. And I was going to put up a link here. We don't have the link available yet, but we are actually starting on July 20th. We're going to be doing an instructional redesign cohort. So those that are interested in that will actually complete the Teaching Information Literacy course together over a period of 3 weeks. And then eligible faculty who complete that, not only can they earn the endorsement, they can also use that as a basis for the instructional redesign program that the Drake Institute has. So fortunately, I don't have a link available for that right now, but if you do have questions or you think you might be interested in that, just let me know. Other resources, the Meaningful Inquiry endorsement. This is a workshop that focuses on designing meaningful and equitable research or inquiry-based assignments. And then teaching it through writing is through our colleagues in the Writing Across the Curriculum. All right, so that is everything that I had. Let me go ahead and check the chat real quickly. Let's see, so Stephanie shared a lot of materials. Let's see. Yeah, I will definitely send information on when the Meaningful Inquiry, or not, sorry, the Teaching Information Literacy Instructional Redesign cohort is available. Absolutely. Yeah, so there are 2 endorsements. One is Meaningful Inquiry, one is Teaching Information Literacy, and actually Teaching Through Writing is also an endorsement. All of those are available through the Drake Institute. The libraries developed Meaningful Inquiry and Teaching Information Literacy, and then Teaching Through Writing is through WAC. Nick shared, I like the screencast discussion idea so that students can compare, comment on the databases and search terms they use on various aspects of drug use in American culture. My only concern is, what if they just watch each other use Google Scholar for each video? That's a great point. And you could put some limitations in the assignment instruction. So you can give some guidance about, you know, that they either have to use multiple search tools if you want them to use multiple ones, or you can, you know, give them a list of recommended resources that they have to use one of those. But I think it also would be, you know, interesting to see if everyone is using Google Scholar. You know, maybe the students can give recommendations to for other resources that might be helpful. Mm-hmm. Okay. So yeah, Kathy, I definitely will send you more information on the instructional redesign cohort. The announcement should be coming out fairly soon, in the next week or so, from the Drake Institute. So I know we are a couple of minutes over. I want to thank everyone, especially those of you that have been here through the entire 6-week process. It seems only like yesterday that I started planning this, and I can't believe that the 6 weeks are already over. It's absolutely crazy, and I certainly didn't expect that I would still be working from home when that happened, but you know, that's how things go. But yeah, thank you everyone for participating. Please don't hesitate to get in contact with me if you do have questions, comments. I'm happy to look at assignment ideas, to think about learning outcomes for particular courses and, you know, revising materials, any of that. So please just let me know and I'm happy to help. And again, yeah, thank you, Stephanie, as well for all of your assistance. So I will hang out for a couple more minutes in case anyone else has any additional questions. But I am going to go ahead and end the recording, and I hope everyone has a really great afternoon.